The air in the JFK terminal hummed with a unique kind of energy, a mixture of stale coffee, jet fuel, and frantic anticipation. It was a symphony of rolling suitcases, garbled announcements, and tearful goodbyes. But between my husband, Liam, and me, there was only a pocket of serene silence. He was practically vibrating with excitement, his smile so wide it looked like it might crack his handsome face. He squeezed my hand for the 10th time, his eyes sparkling with the reflection of the departure board. "I still can't believe you did this, Alara," he breathed, his voice a low, giddy rumble. "The Maldives, a presidential suite for our anniversary, you've outdone yourself." I offered him a small, placid smile, the kind he was used to, the kind that meant I was pleased he was happy. "Only the best for you, Liam. 10 years is a big deal." He leaned in and kissed me, a quick, proprietary peck on the lips. It tasted like expensive cologne and the faint, sweet lie of the latte he'd just finished. I didn't flinch. I had spent months mastering the art of not flinching. "I'm going to miss you like crazy," he said, pulling back, his expression a perfect mask of husbandly devotion. "It's only a week," I replied, my voice smooth as polished stone. I'd be joining him in a week. Or so he believed. That was the story. I had a critical merger to finalize, a deal too important to postpone. He had accepted it easily, almost gratefully. A week alone in paradise before I arrived, the perfect cover. "A week is an eternity without you, Eli." He pulled me into a hug, his arms strong and familiar around me. For a fleeting, treacherous moment, my resolve wavered. I could smell the faint, clean scent of the laundry detergent I used, a scent of home, of us. I pressed my face into his chest, a place that had once been my sanctuary, and held my breath. Then the moment passed and the ice in my veins solidified once more. I pulled away and reached into my handbag, retrieving a single, crisp white envelope. It was heavy, made of thick, expensive cardstock. His name, Liam Vance, was written on the front in my most elegant calligraphy. "What's this?" he asked, a boyish curiosity in his eyes. "Just one last part of the gift," I said softly, "something to read on the plane. Don't open it until you're in the air." He took it, his brow furrowed in a charming, confused smile. "You're full of surprises today." "I am." The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. He gave my hand a final squeeze, his eyes already looking past me, toward the gate, toward his freedom. "I love you, Eli." "I know," I said, and it was the truest thing I'd said to him in half a year. I did know. I knew everything. I watched him walk away, a confident, easy stride in his expensive travel clothes. He turned once at the entrance to the jet bridge, gave a final wave, and then he was gone. I stood there for a long moment, an island of stillness in the rushing river of travelers. I felt nothing, not sadness, not anger, not even relief, just a profound, hollow emptiness. Then, I turned and walked away, my heels clicking a steady, determined rhythm on the polished floor. Once I was outside in the cold, chaotic embrace of the passenger drop-off lane. I pulled out my phone. I found the number for my lawyer, Arthur Croft. I didn't call. I just sent a single, 2-word text message. "Execute now." The cold didn't start at the airport, it started 6 months ago. With something as trivial as a scent. It wasn't Liam's familiar cologne, a crisp, woody fragrance I bought him myself. It was something else, clinging to the collar of his wool overcoat on a Tuesday night. It was sweet and cheap like candied flowers and desperation. It didn't belong in our world. Our world was a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, a silent, minimalist space of glass, steel, and muted colors. Our life was curated, elegant, and successful. We were the Vances. Liam, the charismatic face of a burgeoning tech empire. Me, Alara, the quiet, unseen engine that powered it. I was a strategist, the investor, the one who saw the patterns in the market and turned them into gold. He was the one who charmed the boardrooms and graced the covers of business magazines. It was a partnership that worked, a well-oiled machine that had built us a fortress of wealth and influence. We had a routine, we had a rhythm, we had a shared life built on 10 years of history. Or so I believed. After the perfume, I started noticing other things, small things at first. The kind of details you dismiss as paranoia until they form a constellation of betrayal. His phone, which had always been left casually on the nightstand, was now always screened down. He started clearing his browser history, a habit he'd never had. There were late-night client dinners that ran until 2 in the morning, and weekend work retreats that he'd only mention at the last minute. He became more attentive in a way that felt rehearsed. He'd bring me flowers for no reason. He'd compliment my dress with an intensity that felt forced. He was covering his tracks, but he was clumsy about it. He underestimated me. He always had. He saw my quiet nature as passivity, my introversion as a lack of awareness. He thought that because I didn't enjoy the spotlight, I didn't see what happened in the shadows. He was wrong. I never confronted him, An emotional outburst was not my style. A screaming match would have been undignified and, more importantly, unproductive. It would give him the opportunity to lie, to gaslight, to turn my pain into hysteria. I didn't want his lies. I wanted the truth. I wanted data. So I did what I always do when faced with an unknown variable. I launched an investigation. I contacted a discreet private investigator, a man recommended by Arthur. His name was Mr. Fisher, a former NYPD detective with tired eyes and an aura of quiet competence. We met in a sterile coffee shop in Midtown, a place neither of us would ever frequent. I didn't tell him I was a wife. I told him I was a concerned business partner, worried that a key executive's indiscretions might pose a risk to the company. It was a cleaner narrative, less emotional. I need to know everything, I told him, my voice even, who she is, how long it's been going on, where they meet, what he's telling her. I need facts, not suspicions. Mr. Fisher simply nodded, took the retainer I'd prepared in a manila envelope and said, "I'll be in touch." The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. On the surface, everything was normal. I made dinner with Liam, we discussed interest rates and quarterly projections. We attended a charity gala, where he held my hand and smiled for the cameras. A perfect picture of a power couple. But every night, I would lie beside him in our king-size bed, the space between us feeling like a frozen chasm. I would listen to the rhythm of his breathing and wonder where he had been, whose skin he had touched, what lies he was rehearsing in his dreams. The love I had for him began to curdle, transforming into something cold, hard and analytical. I was no longer a wife, I was a researcher observing a subject. The day Mr. Fisher called, I was in my home office, tracking a volatile stock in the Asian market. The city skyline was a jagged line of silver against a pale blue sky. "I have the preliminary report ready for you, Ms. Vance," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. I met him in the same anonymous coffee shop. He slid a thick envelope across the table. It made a soft, damning sound. My hands were perfectly steady as I opened it. Inside were photographs, glossy, high-resolution images that left no room for doubt. Liam, laughing with a young woman, his head tilted back in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her name was Chloe Astor. She was 25, a lifestyle blogger with a blindingly white smile and a sea of blonde hair. The photos showed them having lunch at a discreet restaurant in the West Village, holding hands while walking through a park, kissing in the back seat of a taxi. There was one picture of them entering a boutique hotel in Soho, the same hotel Liam had claimed to be staying at for a work conference a month prior. The report was meticulous. It included dates, times, and locations. It included summaries of their text message exchanges, obtained through methods I didn't ask about. He called her sunshine. He told her she was his escape, his one true passion. He told her his marriage was a business arrangement, that his wife was cold, emotionally distant, and controlling, that he was only staying until he could safely extricate his finances. I read every word, studied every photograph. I felt the pain. Of course, it was a physical thing. A sharp, brutal blow to my chest that stole my breath. It was the death of a future I had believed in, the shattering of a past I had cherished. But beneath the pain, something else was taking root. It was a cold, clear rage. Not the hot, messy kind, but a quiet, calculating fury. He had called me cold, controlling, a business arrangement. He had painted me as a villain in his sordid little fairy tale to justify his own weakness. He wanted to extricate his finances, our finances, the fortune I had built, block by painstaking block, while he was out playing the part of the magnet. I closed the envelope. My heart was no longer shattering. It was calcifying, hardening into something sharp and unbreakable. I looked at Mr. Fisher, my expression unreadable. "This is excellent work," I said, my voice betraying no emotion. "I'll need you to continue surveillance. I want to know every promise he makes her, every lie he tells her. And I want to know everything about her, her dreams, her debts, her vulnerabilities." He raised an eyebrow, just slightly. "May I ask what the objective is?" I gave him the first genuine smile I had felt in weeks. It was thin and cold and had no warmth in it at all. "Our 10-year wedding anniversary is in 6 months, Mr. Fisher," I said. "I'm planning to give my husband a gift he will never forget." The plan didn't arrive in a single, brilliant flash. It was an evolution, a slow crystallization of my rage. I spent the first few weeks after receiving Fisher's report in a state of suspended reality. I moved through my life like an automaton, executing trades, analyzing market trends, and making small talk with my husband, all while a separate part of my brain was working furiously, processing the raw data of his betrayal. Liam, oblivious, continued his charade. He became the model husband. He'd come home and tell me about his day, editing out the parts that involved Chloe. He'd ask about my work with a feigned interest that was almost insulting. He was so confident in his deception so certain of my ignorance that it made my task easier. He didn't see a wounded wife. He saw the same predictable, placid Alara he had always known. It was the greatest miscalculation of his life. My first move was to understand my enemy. Not Liam. He already understood him all too well. His weaknesses were greed, vanity, and a desperate need for adoration. My focus was on Chloe Astor. Mr. Fisher's continued surveillance provided a comprehensive profile. She was the quintessential modern-day aspirationalist. Her Instagram feed was a carefully curated fantasy of brunch spots, designer knockoffs, and inspirational quotes plastered over sunset photos. She portrayed a life of effortless glamour. But Fisher's financial background check revealed a different story: a mountain of credit card debt, a tiny, overpriced apartment in Bushwick, and a desperate hunger for the life she pretended to have. She wasn't a malicious homewrecker, I concluded. She was simply a pawn, dazzled by a charismatic, wealthy man who promised her the world. She believed Liam's narrative that he was trapped in a loveless, transactional marriage with a cold, older woman, and that she, Chloe, was his great romantic salvation. She was in love with a fantasy, and Liam was in love with the reflection of himself he saw in her adoring eyes. They deserved each other. The centerpiece of my plan became our anniversary, the 10-year mark, a milestone that demanded a grand gesture. Liam would be expecting something: a new watch, a vintage car, perhaps a piece of art. His expectations were my camouflage. The second phase of the plan required me to step out of my comfort zone. I needed a direct line to Chloe, one that couldn't be traced back to me. I created a new identity. I called him Marcus Thorne. Marcus was everything I was not: a gregarious, charming bon vivant. I built his persona online with meticulous care. A LinkedIn profile that listed him as an independent venture capitalist who had attended Stanford with Liam. A private Instagram account with a few carefully chosen photos of yachts and exclusive European local stock images, of course. Then, I created a new email address for Marcus. The address was my weapon. Through Fisher, I knew Liam had often complained to Chloe about his old friends not understanding his marital situation. He had isolated her, making himself her entire world. She would be hungry for an ally, someone from Liam's life who validated their secret love. My first email to her, sent from Marcus's account, was a masterpiece of calculated empathy. Subject: a friend of Liam's. Dear Chloe, you don't know me, but my name is Marcus Thorne and I'm one of Liam's oldest friends. Please don't be alarmed. I'm writing to you because Liam has spoken of you, and I feel compelled to reach out. He's in a difficult position, as I'm sure you know. I've seen him struggle for a long time, and frankly, I haven't seen him as happy as he is when he talks about you and yours. I know this is complicated, but I want you to know you have an ally. He's a good man who deserves happiness. All the best, Marcus. I hit send and felt a jolt of adrenaline, a feeling I usually only got from a high-stakes trade. The waiting was excruciating. For 2 days, there was nothing. I started to think I had miscalculated, that she was more cautious than I'd assumed. Then, on the third day, a reply appeared in my inbox. Subject: Ray, a friend of Liam's. Oh my God, Marcus. Hi, I can't believe you emailed me. Liam has mentioned you. I'm sorry. I was just so surprised. Thank you so much for your message. It means more than you know. It's been hard, feeling like a secret. It's amazing to hear that he talks about me. Thank you. Chloe. Her reply was a flood of relief and gratitude. She was hooked. I became her confidant. As Marcus, I was a sympathetic ear, the wise older friend who understood the nuances of their tragic love story. I fed her a steady diet of encouragement and validation. I passed on fictional messages from Liam, tales of how he was working tirelessly to untangle his finances so they could be together. He told me the legalities are incredibly complex. I wrote in one email, his wife has her name on everything. He has to be careful not to raise her suspicions, or she could make things very ugly for him. He's doing this for you, for your future together. Each lie I typed was a brick in the foundation of their prison. Chloe absorbed it all. Her trust in Marcus absolute. She would send me long, rambling emails detailing her love for Liam, her dreams of a life with him, her frustrations with the waiting. I would reply with carefully crafted messages of support, all while saving every one of her confessions in a secure file. It was a cold, cruel thing to do. But every time a pang of guilt pricked at me, I would simply open Mr. Fisher's report and look at the photos of my husband kissing her in the back of that taxi. The guilt would vanish, replaced by icy resolve. Simultaneously, I initiated the third phase of my plan, the financial disentanglement. This was my territory. For years, I had managed our portfolio. Liam was a rainmaker, but I was the one who made the rain grow into a flood. He trusted my financial acumen implicitly, mostly because he didn't understand the complex structures I had built. His greed was my leverage. I scheduled a meeting with him and our lawyer, Arthur Croft, in Arthur's mahogany-paneled office. Arthur was old school, a man of few words and absolute discretion. He was the only person I had confided in, and his loyalty was to me, not to Liam. Liam, darling, I began, placing a hand on his arm, I've been reviewing our asset allocation, and I think we're unnecessarily exposed. With the market volatility, I want to create a more robust firewall to protect what we've built. His eyes glazed over slightly, as they always did when I started talking about trusts and tax shields. Whatever you think is best, Eli, you're the genius in that department. I'm proposing we move the bulk of our liquid assets and property titles into a series of irrevocable trusts, I explained. My voice calm and professional. It will shield us from potential liabilities and significantly lower our tax burden in the long run. Arthur has the paperwork ready. Arthur slid a thick stack of documents across the polished table. It's a standard asset protection strategy, Liam, he said in his gravelly voice. Alara's planning is, as usual, impeccable. Liam beamed, puffing up with pride, my brilliant wife. He spent the next 20 minutes signing his name where Arthur indicated, barely skimming the pages. He had no idea that the fine print he was ignoring effectively signed over complete control of our shared fortune to me. The trusts were structured so that I was a sole trustee with absolute authority. His signature was a formality, an abdication. He was signing away his kingdom, and all he could think about was the money he was supposedly saving on taxes. As he made the final flourish with the pen, I felt a grim sense of triumph. He had just handed me the sword. In the weeks that followed, I played the part of the doting wife with chilling perfection. I suggested we start planning our anniversary celebration. Something big, I said one evening over dinner. Something just for us, to celebrate 10 years, to celebrate everything. A flicker of guilt crossed his face. So fleeting I would have missed it if I hadn't been looking for it. He was thinking of Chloe. Anything you want, Eli? He said, his voice a little too loud. I was thinking a trip, I mused, somewhere far away, remote, where we can just disconnect from the world. His eyes lit up, an escape. I love that idea, he said. Where are you thinking? It's a surprise, I said, smiling. Let me handle everything, it's my gift to you. The final piece of the puzzle was the destination. It had to be remote, luxurious, and difficult to leave, a beautiful cage. After days of research, I found it, a hyper-exclusive resort in a remote atoll of the Maldives. It consisted of a handful of over-water bungalows accessible only by a private seaplane. It was exorbitantly expensive, a place designed for maximum privacy and isolation. It was perfect. I booked the most opulent accommodation they have, presidential villa, for 1 month. Paying the entire, staggering sum in advance, I booked a first-class, one-way ticket for Liam Vance. And then, using a different credit card tied to a shell corporation, I booked another first-class, one-way ticket on the exact same flight. The name on the second ticket was Chloe Astor. My last communication with Chloe as Marcus was the most critical. Subject, the time is now. Chloe, this is it. Liam has done it, he's arranged everything. He's taking you away to start your new life together. He's booked a trip to the Maldives. It's a surprise, a grand romantic gesture. He can't contact you directly for security reasons, so he's asked me to pass on the details. Your flight leaves from JFK on November 15th. I've attached the ticket. He will be on the same flight. He's leaving a note for his wife and flying out to meet you. He said to just wait for him at the gate. This is the beginning of your forever. Be ready. Your friend, Marcus. I attached the ticket and sent the email. There was no turning back now. The pieces were all in place, the trap was set. All I had to do was wait for the anniversary, for the final act of our marriage to play out. The great pretender had played his part. Now it was my turn to take the stage. With the final booking confirmed, a profound and unnerving stillness settled over me. There was no joy, no triumph, just the quiet hum of a complex machine set in motion. The tickets were digital, the confirmation stored in a secure cloud server. But I felt their weight as if they were lead plates in my stomach. For the first time, my plan had moved from the abstract realm of thought and strategy into the concrete world of dates, flight numbers, and non-refundable payments. The path ahead was now a narrow, one-way street. The final 2 weeks before our anniversary were the most difficult performance of my life. I had to become the woman Liam believed me to be, but amplified. I had to be the doting wife, giddy with the secret she was keeping, planning the romantic getaway of a lifetime. My every action, every word, had to be a brushstroke in this masterpiece of deception. I began leaving travel magazines open on the coffee table. Pages turned to articles about pristine beaches and turquoise waters. Just getting some ideas for when you finally let me tell you the surprise. I'd say with a playful smile when he asked. He would chuckle, shake his head, and call me his master planner. He had no idea. One evening, I found him in our walk-in closet, staring at his row of suits with a frown. I came up behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist and resting my chin on his shoulder. "What's on your mind?" I asked softly. "Just thinking about what to pack," he said, a little too casually for the trip. "You don't have to worry about a thing," I purred, running my hand over the lapel of a gray cashmere jacket. "It's going to be warm, very warm. Think linen shirts, swimming trunks, sandals. Leave all this formality behind." I let my voice drop to a suggestive whisper. "It's going to be a complete escape." His body relaxed against mine. "You think of everything, don't you?" "I try to," I said. In my mind's eye, I saw Chloe, reading an email from Marcus telling her the very same thing. Pack for a new life in the sun. Leave everything else behind. The tension in our apartment was thick enough to taste, but only I could sense it. Liam was simply excited, like a child waiting for Christmas. My tension was that of a bomb disposal expert on the final wire. One wrong move, one flicker of emotion in my eyes, one question asked too sharply, and the entire edifice could collapse. There were moments that tested my composure to its limits. One afternoon, I was in my office when he walked in, his phone pressed to his ear. He was laughing, a genuine, unguarded laugh that I hadn't heard directed at me in years. He saw me, and his face changed instantly. The laughter died in his throat, replaced by a tight, professional smile. "Listen, I've got to go," he said quickly into the phone. "I'll connect with you later." He hung up and tossed the phone onto the desk. "Sorry, it was just a colleague telling a ridiculous story about the interns." My heart was a cold, hard knot in my chest. I knew it was her. I knew from the shift in his energy. The way the light in his eyes was extinguished the moment he saw me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pick up the phone and hurl it against the wall. I wanted to demand to know who he was talking to. What joke was so funny that he couldn't share it with his own wife? Instead, I gave him a serene smile. "No problem. As long as the interns aren't burning the place down." I turned back to my screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. My pulse was hammering in my wrists, but my expression was a mask of placid indifference. I waited until I heard him leave the room. Then I took a slow, deep breath, unclenching the fists I hadn't realized I'd made. He was getting careless, cocky. That was good. It meant he didn't suspect a thing. A few days before the anniversary, I found myself drawn to a box of old photographs in the back of a storage closet. I pulled one out. It was from our honeymoon in Italy. We were standing on a bridge in Venice, impossibly young. Liam's arm was around me, and he was looking at me with an expression of such pure, unadulterated love that it felt like a punch to the gut. I remembered that man. I had loved that man. Where had he gone? Had he ever really existed? Or was he just a role Liam was playing even then? I stared at the photo, at the smiling face of the woman who was me. She was so hopeful, so trusting. She believed in the forever they had promised each other. A wave of grief, sharp and potent, washed over me. It was a mourning for that woman, for the life she thought she would have. I allowed myself to feel it, just for a moment. I let the tears well in my eyes, a silent testament to the death of our marriage. Then, I carefully placed the photograph back in the box, closed the lid, and pushed it back into the darkness. The woman in that photo was gone. The woman who remained was a survivor. The night of our 10th anniversary arrived on a wave of cold November air. I had booked a table at Per Se, a restaurant where reservations were a status symbol, and the view of Columbus Circle was dizzying. It was where he had proposed to me. The symmetry was deliberate. A place for beginnings, now a place for the end. I wore a simple, elegant black dress that he had always loved. I wanted to look like the woman he thought he was married to, the beautiful, successful, predictable wife. He was waiting for me at the bar when I arrived, a glass of champagne in hand. He looked impossibly handsome in a dark, tailored suit. "There she is," he said, his smile lighting up his face. He kissed me, his lips warm. "Happy anniversary, my love." "Happy anniversary, Liam," I replied, my voice steady. The dinner was a blur of exquisite food and meaningless conversation. We talked about the market, about a recent acquisition his company had made, about mutual friends. We were two actors in a play, reciting lines we had long since memorized. All the while, a clock was ticking in my head, counting down the seconds to the final scene. After the main course, he reached across the table and took my hand. His expression turned serious. "Ernest, Alara," he began, his voice low and sincere. "This last decade it's been incredible. We've built an empire. But none of it would have been possible without you. You are my rock, my partner, my everything. I know I'm not always the easiest person to live with. I get caught up in work. I travel too much. But I want you to know, there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not grateful for you." It was a beautiful speech, polished, heartfelt, and utterly false. He was apologizing for his absences, for the distance between us, without ever admitting the true cause. He was absolving his guilt so he could enjoy my gift with a clear conscience. He then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a long, velvet box. He slid it across the table. For you. I opened it. Lying on a bed of black satin was a diamond necklace. It was a river of light. A stunning, ostentatious piece of jewelry. It must have cost a fortune. It was a guilt gift. A down payment on his future betrayal. Liam, it's breathtaking, I whispered, feigning awe. My performance was flawless. I allowed a tear of gratitude to slip down my cheek. He beamed, filled with magnanimous pride. I let him fasten it around my neck. The diamonds were cold against my skin. Thank you, I said, looking him directly in the eye. It's beautiful. Now, it was my turn. I have something for you, too, I said, my voice filled with manufactured excitement. I signaled to the Mactor D, who approached our table carrying a large, exquisitely wrapped gift box from an expensive designer brand. I had had it delivered to the restaurant earlier that day. Liam's eyes widened. He loved grand gestures, and this was certainly one. He tore at the ribbon like an excited child, lifting the lid of the box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a handsome, dark leather travel portfolio. Eli, this is beautiful, he said, admiring the craftsmanship. But I thought the trip was a gift. This is a trip, I said, smiling. Open it. He unzipped the portfolio. Inside, the first thing he saw, perfectly displayed in a clear sleeve, was his first-class ticket to Maldives. Beside it, tucked into another slot, was a glossy brochure for the St. Regis Van Mully Resort, open to a page showcasing the John Jacob Astor estate, their version of a presidential villa. The photos were pure fantasy. A sprawling over-water palace with a private pool, panoramic ocean views, and personal butler service. He stared at it, speechless. His mouth opened and closed a few times before he finally managed to speak. You're kidding me, he whispered, his eyes scanning the brochure. The St. Regis, Alara, this is insane. This must have cost a fortune. 10 years, I said simply. I told you, only the best for you. He was so mesmerized by the sheer luxury of it all, so blinded by the names and the pictures, that he didn't bother to look any deeper. He didn't notice that his ticket was one way. He didn't check the second ticket, which was tucked away in an inner pocket of the portfolio, its secret safely hidden. All he saw was the promise of paradise. He stood up, came around the table, and pulled me out of my chair into a tight embrace. He buried his face in my hair. Thank you, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you, Alara. This is the best gift anyone has ever given me. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him close. I could feel the frantic, happy beat of his heart against my chest. You have no idea, I whispered, so softly that only I could hear. You have no idea what I've given you. The next morning, the day of his departure, our apartment was filled with a strange, frantic energy. Liam was buzzing, pulling clothes from the closet, folding linen shirts with uncharacteristic care, and asking me questions every few minutes. Do you think I'll need a blazer maybe for a formal dinner? He called out from the bedroom. I told you, darling, leave the formality here, I replied from the kitchen. My voice light and airy. I was making him coffee just as I did every morning. The routine was a comforting anchor in the swirling vortex of my deception. This is about pure relaxation, no rules, no schedules, except for the one I have meticulously planned. He came into the kitchen, already dressed in expensive, comfortable travel attire. He looked like the cover of a men's travel magazine, effortlessly chic and ready for adventure. He wrapped his arms around me from behind as I stood at the espresso machine. I'm going to have to do something spectacular for your birthday to even come close to this, he murmured into my ear. Maybe a private island. I'll have to buy you a private island. I chuckled, a perfectly pitched sound of amusement. Let's just get through this trip first. I handed him his coffee. Our eyes met over the rim of the cup. His were filled with a mixture of excitement and a faint, flickering guilt he was trying to suppress. Mine were a placid, unreadable mask. The drive to JFK was the final stage. I insisted on driving him myself. It's the least I can do, I'd said. I want to see you off properly. It was essential that I was the last person from his old life that he saw. The conversation in the car was light, superficial. We talked about the weather, the traffic. He scrolled through his phone, smiling at something on the screen. I didn't need to ask who he was texting. I could already picture Chloe in her tiny apartment, her heart pounding with excitement, rereading the final email from Marcus. He's on his way. This is it. Your new life is about to begin. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching a movie of my own life. I was both the protagonist and the director, observing the scene unfold with a critical, dispassionate eye. There was Alara, the wronged wife, driving her philandering husband to the airport. There was Liam, the charming cheat, oblivious to the fact that he was driving toward his own carefully constructed doom. At the terminal, I pulled up to the curb for first-class departures. The skycaps descended, ready to take his luggage. Liam got out of the car and came around to my side, leaning in through the open window. "So, you're sure about the merger?" he asked one last time. "You can't just postpone it. Fly out with me now." It was a token protest. I knew, and he knew, that he was secretly thrilled at the prospect of a week alone. "I wish I could," I said, my voice laced with convincing regret. "You know I wouldn't miss a second with you if I didn't absolutely have to. But I'll be there before you know it. Just save me a cocktail." "I'll save you 100, he promised. He leaned in for the kiss, the one I had been dreading and rehearsing for months. It was the centerpiece of the cold open, the final, public display of our fractured union. I met his lips with a practiced warmth. It was quick, a little desperate on his part, and utterly empty. "I love you, Eli," he said, pulling back. "I know," I replied, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. This was the moment, the culmination of 6 months of planning, of sleepless nights and a heart frozen in grief. I reached for my handbag on the passenger seat, the same bag from which I'd retrieved the fateful white envelope. But before I could, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. My brow furrowed. I wasn't expecting any communication. Everything was automated from this point on. I opened the message. It contained a single image. My blood ran cold. It was a photograph of a flight information board, the kind you see at the departure gates. It showed the details for flight EK to Ofer to Dubai, connecting to mail. But below the flight information, someone had placed a piece of paper on the paper. Written in neat, block letters were the words, "I know what you're doing." I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. The world around me seemed to warp and slow down. Liam was still standing there, waiting for my final parting gift, a quizzical look on his face. "Eli, everything okay?" I couldn't breathe. Who sent this? How could they possibly know? My plan was airtight. Only Arthur Croft knew the full extent of it, and his discretion was legendary. Mr. Fisher? Unlikely. He was a professional, paid for a job he had completed weeks ago. Chloe? Impossible. She was the pawn, not the player. A second message buzzed through. This time, it was just text. "He's not the only one who lies, is he, Alara? You think you're so smart. You think you have it all figured out. But you don't know the whole story. You're about to ruin the wrong life." My carefully constructed composure shattered. A wave of panic, hot and sickening, washed over me. The wrong life. What did that mean? I looked at Liam, his handsome, familiar face suddenly seeming like that of a stranger. Was there something I had missed? Some crucial piece of data that Fisher's investigation hadn't uncovered? "Alara, you're white as a sheet." "What is it?" Liam's voice was sharp with concern now. He tried to peer at my phone screen, but I instinctively angled it away. My mind was racing, trying to process this new, catastrophic variable. The plan, my beautiful, perfect, intricate plan, was suddenly teetering on the edge of a cliff. The anonymous messenger knew about the flight. They knew my name. They knew I was the one pulling the strings. This changed everything. My revenge was predicated on the idea that I was in complete control, that I was the invisible hand guiding Liam and Chloe to their fate. But now there was another hand, an unknown player, and they were trying to stop me. For a moment, I considered aborting the mission. I could tell Liam the trip was off, that there was an emergency, we could go home, and I could try to figure out who was behind the messages. But then what? The tickets were bought, the trusts were activated, the lie had been told. Aborting now would expose everything, but in a messy, uncontrolled way that would leave me vulnerable. Liam would know I had been plotting against him. He would fight back, and he would fight dirty. And what about the message, "You're about to ruin the wrong life"? Was it a bluff? A desperate attempt from someone to protect Liam? Or was it a genuine warning? I looked at Liam's face, searching for some clue, some sign that he was part of a larger deception I hadn't seen. But all I saw was the same man I had been married to for a decade, charming, self-absorbed, and utterly convinced of his own cleverness. The skycap was gesturing impatiently. We were holding up traffic. I had to make a decision, now. My panic receded, replaced by the cold, hard logic that had guided me for the past 6 months. I had come too far. I had invested to move emotionally, financially, strategically. To back down now because of a cryptic, anonymous threat would be to seek control, to admit defeat. I had built this trap with precision. I had to trust my own architecture. I took a deep, steadying breath and forced a smile onto my face. It felt brittle, like a piece of glass about to crack. "It's nothing, darling," I said, my voice a little shaky, "just a work alert, a sudden market shift. It's fine, I'll handle it." Liam looked unconvinced, but the mention of work was a language he understood. He glanced at his watch. "Well, I should go. I don't want to miss the flight." "Of course," I said, My hand went back to my purse, my movements now stiff and robotic. I pulled out the crisp white envelope. It felt heavier than it had before, filled with a new and terrible uncertainty. I handed it to him. One last part of the gift, I recited, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Don't open it until you're in the air. He took it, his eyes still searching my face for a hint of what was wrong. Eli. If something's wrong. Everything is fine, I insisted, cutting him off with a tone of finality. Go. Have an amazing time. I'll see you in a week. He hesitated for another second, then seemed to decide that paradise was more appealing than my sudden strange mood. He leaned in, gave me one last, quick kiss on the cheek and turned away. I love you, he called over his shoulder as he walked toward the terminal doors. I watched him go, but my triumph had evaporated, replaced by a gnawing dread. I was no longer an avenging angel executing a flawless plan. I was a gambler who had just pushed all her chips into the center of the table, only to be told the deck was stacked against her. As soon as he was out of sight, my hands shaking, I typed a reply to the unknown number. Who is this? The reply came back almost instantly. Someone who knows you're making a terrible mistake. Liam is not the man you think he is. And Chloe is not who you think she is. You need to stop this. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sent another message. What do you mean? But there was no reply. I sent the question again and again. Nothing. The line had gone dead. I was alone in my car in the chaos of the airport, with the chilling words echoing in my mind. You're about to ruin the wrong life. I had sent Liam to his fate. But what if that fate was not the one I had designed? What if I had just lit the fuse on a bomb, not realizing I was standing right on top of it? The drive back to Manhattan was a blur. The city's skyline, usually a sight that filled me with a sense of power and belonging, now seemed menacing. A cage of glass and steel. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every anonymous face in the cars beside me a potential accuser. The cryptic messages had shattered my cold certainty, replacing it with a frantic, gnawing anxiety. Liam is not the man you think he is, and Chloe is not who you think she is. The words looped in my head, a poisonous mantra. What could they mean? I had spent 6 months studying my husband's betrayal. I had files, photographs, financial records. I had a mountain of data that painted a clear picture of a self-serving man, having a sordid affair with a younger, impressionable woman. What other man could he be? What other woman could she be? I pulled into the garage beneath our apartment building, the squeal of the tires echoing my frayed nerves. Upstairs, the penthouse was cavernously silent. The lingering scent of Liam's cologne hung in the air, a ghostly presence. The sight of his empty coffee cup on the counter, the indentation on the sofa cushion, where he'd been sitting, these small domestic details, now felt like clues in a crime scene, where I was no longer sure who the victim was. My first instinct was to call Arthur. He would be logical and calm. I paced the length of the living room, my phone in my hand, but I hesitated. What would I tell him? That my foolproof plan had been compromised by a series of anonymous text messages? That I was suddenly questioning the very foundation of my actions? He would advise caution, a strategic retreat, but Liam was already in the air. The gears were already turning. Arthur couldn't stop the machine now. Instead, I went to my office. I needed data. I needed to re-examine everything, to look for the detail I had missed, the flaw in my own investigation. I pulled up Mr. Fisher's entire file on Chloe Astor. I had read it dozens of times, but now I looked at it with fresh, terrified eyes. There she was, the aspiring influencer, the mountain of debt, the curated life of lattes and borrowed luxury. It all seemed so straightforward, so pathetic. She was a perfect target for a man like Liam. But what if that was the point? What if the image she projected was a deliberate construction? A camouflage as effective as my own serene wife persona? I started digging deeper, moving beyond Fisher's report. I spent hours online, falling down a rapid hole of Chloe's digital footprint, her blog, her tagged photos, her old social media accounts. It was a wasteland of superficiality. But then, I found something. It was a link in the bio of an old, abandoned Twitter profile. The link led to a fundraising page on a site dedicated to medical expenses. The page was for a woman named Sarah Astor. Her photo showed a frail but smiling woman in a hospital bed. The page, created by Chloe, detailed her mother's long, expensive battle with a rare form of cancer. It spoke of mounting bills, of insurance companies refusing to cover experimental treatments, of a daughter's desperate fight to save her mother's life. The campaign had ended a year ago, having raised only a fraction of its goal. The last update was a short, heartbreaking post from Chloe, thanking the few who had donated and stating that her mother had passed away. I sat back, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. This was a side of Chloe I had never seen. The flighty, superficial blogger was also a grieving daughter who had fought and lost a devastating battle. It didn't exonerate her for having an affair with a married man, But it added a layer of desperation, of tragedy, that I hadn't accounted for. It made her more human. Then my eyes caught a detail on the page, the date of her mother's death. It was just a few weeks before Fisher's report indicated her affair with Liam had begun. She hadn't just been in debt. She had been shattered by grief and likely burdened with her mother's final medical bills. Liam wouldn't have just been a fantasy of a better life. He would have been a lifeline. The phone rang, jolting me out of my thoughts. It was Arthur. "Alara," he said, his voice its usual gravelly calm. "The initial asset freeze is complete. All joint accounts are locked. He won't be able to access a single penny. Phase 1 is a success." A week ago, these words would have been a sweet victory. Now, they felt like a death sentence I had just pronounced. "Arthur," I said, my voice strained. "Something has happened." I told him about the text messages. I told him about the medical fundraising page. I told him about the gnawing feeling in my gut that something was terribly wrong. He was silent for a long moment. I could hear the faint sound of him tapping a pen on his desk. "An anonymous party adds an unpredictable element," he said finally. "But it doesn't necessarily change the facts, Alara. Liam was unfaithful. He lied to you for over a year. He was conspiring to take a significant portion of your shared wealth. Those facts remain, regardless of this Chloe Astor's personal tragedies or some unknown texter's motives." "But what if the texter is right?" I pressed, my voice rising with a note of hysteria I despised. "What if I'm ruining the wrong life? What if there's more to this?" "Then we need more information," Arthur said, his tone firm, pulling me back from the edge of panic. "This person who texted you, they have your number. They want something. The fact they've gone silent suggests they are waiting for something. Perhaps for Liam to land. Perhaps for him to open that envelope. For now, we do nothing, we wait and we watch." He was right. Panicking was unproductive. I needed to think like a strategist again. Not a frightened spouse. The person who sent the messages had an agenda. To understand their agenda, I needed to understand what they knew, and why they chose to reveal themselves now. I tried to trace the number, using some of the software tools I used for deep background checks on potential investments. It was a dead end, a burner phone, routed through a series of proxy servers. It was professional. This wasn't some friend of Chloe's trying to intervene. This was someone who knew how to cover their tracks. The hours ticked by. Liam's flight was a red line crawling across a map on my computer screen, moving inexorably from Dubai toward the Maldives. I imagined him on the plane, sleeping, watching a movie, perhaps blissfully unaware as he flew towards his gilded cage. Or was he? Could he be part of this? Was the entire affair a more elaborate con than I could ever have imagined? Was he trying to frame Chloe for something? It seemed too convoluted, too theatrical, even for Liam. Then, another thought struck me, so cold and sharp it felt like a physical blow. "Liam is not the man you think he is," the phrase echoed in my mind. My investigation had focused on his infidelity. But what if that was just a symptom of a much deeper disease? What if his business, the tech empire he was the face of, was not what it seemed? My mind flashed to the conversation we'd had before he left, the merger. I told him I was staying behind for. It was a lie, a convenient excuse. But his company was in the middle of a massive, high-stakes merger with a German tech conglomerate. Liam had been ecstatic about it, heralding it as a deal that would make them a global superpower. I had handled our personal investments, but I had always kept a firewall between our finances and the inner workings of his company, a rule we both agreed on early in our marriage. I knew the public details, the projected earnings, but I didn't know the nitty-gritty. Driven by a new, terrible suspicion, I began to dig into the merger. I used my access to premium financial databases, tools far more powerful than a simple Google search. I pulled up corporate filings, shareholder reports, and regulatory disclosures from both his company and the German firm. At first, everything seemed normal. The numbers were strong, the growth projections optimistic. But then I started looking at the margins, the fine print, the footnotes in the financial statements that most people ignore. I found anomalies, discrepancies in the inventory valuation, irregularities in the accounts receivable, small things, but they were a pattern. It was the kind of creative accounting that bordered on fraud. It was designed to inflate the company's value, to make it look far more profitable and stable than it actually was, just ahead of the merger's finalization. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just about cheating on his wife. This was a multi-million-dollar corporate fraud scheme, and Liam was at the center of it. He wasn't just a philanderer, he was a criminal. Suddenly, his affair with Chloe took on a new, sinister light. Was she just a distraction, a cover? Or was she somehow involved? The anonymous text came flooding back into my mind. "You don't know the whole story." My phone buzzed again, my heart leaped into my throat. It was the same unknown number. A new message. "He's landed. Has he opened the envelope yet?" I stared at the words, my hands trembling. This person wasn't just watching me. They were watching Liam too. They knew his exact movements. Before I could reply, another message came through. You think you're punishing a cheating husband. You don't realize you're about to expose a whistleblower. Whistleblower? My mind reeled. I typed a frantic reply. What are you talking about? Who is a whistleblower? The 3 dots indicating the other person was typing appeared, disappeared, and then reappeared. The pause was agonizing. Finally, the message came. Chloe Astor. She's been feeding information about the fraudulent accounting to the German regulators for the past 3 months. The affair was her way in. Liam thought he was playing her. In reality, she was playing him. The message landed with the force of a physical impact. I stumbled back from my desk, my hand flying to my mouth. A wave of nausea rolled through me. Chloe Astor, whistleblower. The 2 concepts were so discordant, so utterly incompatible with the narrative I had painstakingly constructed, that my mind refused to accept them. It was impossible. Chloe was a lifestyle blogger buried in debt. She wasn't some brilliant corporate spy. The affair was her way in. The idea was preposterous. It sounded like the plot of a bad movie. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I typed a reply. You're lying. I've seen her. I've read her messages to him. She's in love with him. Or she thinks she is. The response was instantaneous, cold and clinical. It's called deep cover, Alara. She had to be convincing. She had to make him trust her. Make him believe she adored him. It was the only way he would get careless enough to let her get close to the real information. Close to his personal laptop, his private files. My mind flashed back to all the communications I had monitored. The breathless emails Chloe had sent to Marcus, my fictional persona. I had seen them as the naive ramblings of a lovesick girl. But what if they were something else? What if they were reports? What if Marcus was her unwitting cutout? A trusted third party she was using to document Liam's promises, creating a timeline of his duplicity that she could use as leverage? She was playing a double game, and I had been her unwitting accomplice. The puzzle pieces began to slam into place with sickening speed. The date her affair with Liam started just after her mother's death. It wasn't a rebound. It was a catalyst. The grief and anger from watching her mother be destroyed by a system that valued money over life could have easily morphed into a burning desire for justice. Liam's company, with its fraudulent practices, would have been the perfect target. The text I had received, "You're about to ruin the wrong life." It wasn't about Liam. It was about Chloe. My plan, my perfect revenge, was about to derail her entire operation. By stranding her on an island with no money and no communication, I wasn't just trapping a mistress. I was silencing a key witness on the verge of bringing down a massive corporate fraud. Oh, God, I whispered to the empty room. What have I done? I thought of the envelope that Liam was, at this very moment, probably opening in his luxurious villa, the one containing the signed divorce papers, the empty bank statements, and the photograph of Chloe waiting for him at the gate. It wasn't just a revelation of his affair. It was a declaration of war. It would tell him, in no uncertain terms, that I knew everything. Or so he would think. He would believe I knew about Chloe, and his first assumption would be that Chloe had betrayed him. That she had come to me, confessed everything, and that we had planned this together. He would see her not as the adoring girl he had manipulated, but as a co-conspirator in his downfall. A man like Liam, cornered and exposed, would be a dangerous animal. And he was trapped on a remote island with the woman he now believed had orchestrated his ruin. I was no longer punishing my husband. I was putting a target on Chloe Astor's back. My phone buzzed again, the same number. The German regulators were set to move in next week, once the merger was finalized. Chloe was their star witness. She has documented proof copies of internal ledgers, recordings of Liam bragging about their accounting tricks. It's all on a secure server, but she was the only one who could provide the context. The human intelligence, if Liam figures out who she is before she. The text message cut off, leaving the thread hanging in the digital air. More terrifying than any explicit warning. If Liam figures out who she is before she can get away. My blood ran cold. The image that flooded my mind was horrific, the two of them, isolated in that opulent villa, miles from anywhere. The turquoise water and white sand I had chosen as a backdrop for my revenge now seemed like the elements of a perfect crime scene. My carefully planned paradise had become a potential tomb. I sprang into action, the paralysis of shock replaced by a surge of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. My analytical mind, the one that navigated volatile markets, took over. Emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford. I needed a solution, and I needed it 10 minutes ago. My first call was to Arthur. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Arthur, abort everything," I said, my voice tight and clipped, and lock the accounts, all of them. "Right now." "Alara, what's going on?" he asked, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to my rising panic. There's no time to explain, just do it. I need to get money to Liam. I need him to be able to leave that island. I relayed the information from the anonymous texter in a few frantic, breathless sentences. The fraud, the whistleblower. The catastrophic mistake I had made. My God, Arthur breathed. It was the first time in all the years I had known him that I heard him sound genuinely shocked. Alara, this is police level, federal. We could be implicated in obstructing a federal investigation. I don't care about that right now, Arthur. I snapped, pacing my office like a caged animal. I care about the fact that I may have just sent a woman to her death. Unlock the funds, now. There was a pause, then the decisive sound of typing. It's done, the accounts are liquid again. But Alara, what is your plan? I don't have one yet, I admitted, my mind racing. I hung up the phone and immediately tried to call the resort in the Maldives. The international connection seemed to take an eternity. Every ring was a hammer blow against my nerves. Finally, a polite, calm voice answered. St. Regis Family Resort. How may I assist you? I need to speak to a guest, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Liam Vance. He's staying in the John Jacob Astor estate, it's an emergency. One moment, madam, I will connect you. The line went quiet, filled with the generic, soothing music of the resort's hold system. It was a jaunty, tropical tune that sounded like a mockery of my terror. I waited and waited. Each second stretched into an hour. Finally, the receptionist came back on the line. I'm sorry, madam, but there was no answer from the villa's phone. Of course there wasn't. Why would he be sitting by the phone? I imagined him standing on the deck, the damning envelope in his hand, the realization of his situation dawning on him. I imagined Chloe, perhaps approaching him with a hopeful smile, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. Is there any other way to contact him? I pleaded. Can you send someone to the villa? A member of your staff, tell him his wife called, that it's a life or death emergency. Madam, it is our policy not to disturb our guests unless explicitly requested. The privacy and seclusion of the estate is its primary appeal. This is not a request, it's a demand. I was nearly shouting now. You don't understand. The woman he's with, she could be in grave danger. You need to send someone, now. The receptionist's voice turned cool and professional. Madam, if you believe there is a credible threat, I suggest you contact the local authorities. We are not a security force. She gave me the number for the Maldivian police service and disconnected the call. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Red tape and resort policy were building a wall between me and them. I knew calling the local police would be a slow, bureaucratic nightmare. I didn't have time. I needed to get to Chloe directly. I had her email, but sending a message felt futile. Would she even see it? I needed a more direct line. I pulled up Fisher's old report, scrolling frantically. In the detailed background check, there was a number listed for her deactivated cell phone. A long shot. But maybe, just maybe, she had a new phone with the same number. My fingers trembled as I dialed. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, a small, hesitant voice answered. Hello. Chloe? I gasped, relief washing over me so intensely I felt dizzy. Chloe, this is Alara Vance. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, followed by stunned silence. Chloe, are you there? You have to listen to me. I know this is going to sound insane, but you are in terrible danger. Alara. Her voice was a whisper. How did you get this number? What are you talking about? Liam said you were in New York. I am in New York. Chloe. Where are you right now? Are you with him? I'm in the villa. He went outside to the deck a few minutes ago. He seemed upset about something. He had an envelope. He told me to wait inside. Her voice was filled with confusion, not fear. She had no idea. Okay, listen to me very carefully, I said, speaking quickly and clearly. Do not go outside. Do not talk to him. I have made a terrible mistake. I know what you're doing. I know about the investigation. I know you're the whistleblower. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. How she began, but her voice broke. There's no time to explain how I know. All that matters is that Liam now has reason to believe that I know about his affair with you. He's going to think you betrayed him. He's going to think you told me everything. You cannot let him know that you know he's been exposed. Do you understand? Oh my God, she whispered. The reality of her situation was beginning to dawn on her. He looked at me before he went outside. The way he looked at me, it wasn't right. Chloe, you need to get out of there. Now? Quietly. Is there a back door, a service entrance? I think so. The staff use it. It leads to a walkway at the back of the villa. Good. Take your phone, your passport, and nothing else. Don't pack. Don't make a sound. Get out of the villa and go straight to the main reception building. Tell them you need to leave the island immediately. I've unfrozen all the accounts. The money is there. You can buy a ticket. Just get out of there. I could hear a small sob. a sound of pure terror. Okay, I'm going. Chloe, one more thing, I said, my voice dropping. The anonymous person who has been helping you, the one guiding your investigation, it's not who you think it is. You need to be careful who you trust. Before she could ask what I meant, I heard a sound from her end of the linea, heavy, sliding glass door opening. A man's voice, low and laced with a terrifying calm, called out her name. Chloe? Who are you talking to? It was Liam. My heart stopped. Chloe gasped. The line went dead. Chloe. I screamed into the phone. But there was only silence. He had found her. I was too late. I stood frozen in my office, the silent phone clutched in my hand. The weight of what I had set in motion crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. I had tried to be a puppet master, pulling the strings of my own private revenge fantasy. But I was just another puppet, and the real players were still hidden in the shadows. My phone buzzed. It was the anonymous number, a new message, just one word. Too late. A wave of pure, primal rage surged through me, eclipsing the fear. I would not let this be the end. I would not let them win. I didn't know who they were or what their ultimate game was. But they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated me, just like Liam had. I booked the first available flight to Mail. It left in 3 hours. It didn't matter that it was a 20-hour journey. It didn't matter what I would find when I got there. I was no longer the detached strategist or the grieving wife. I was a force of nature. And I was heading straight into the eye of the storm I had created. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, my mind was already working, formulating a new plan. A plan not for revenge, but for rescue. And for retribution against the person who had played us all. The flight to Mail was a 20-hour purgatory. I was trapped in a pressurized cabin, suspended between continents, completely powerless. My mind was a relentless cyclone of worst-case scenarios, each one more horrific than the last. I replayed the final seconds of my call with Chloe over and over. The sound of the sliding door, Liam's chillingly calm voice, the abrupt silence, too late. The words from the anonymous texter were a death sentence echoing in my ears. I didn't sleep, I didn't eat. I stared out the window at the endless expanse of clouds and tried to re-engineer the disaster. Who was this invisible player? Who had manipulated me, Liam and Chloe, like pieces on a chessboard? The message about the whistleblower, it was too specific, too timely. It wasn't a warning, it was a move designed to make me panic, to make me call Chloe, to escalate the situation in that villa to its breaking point. They hadn't wanted me to save her. They had wanted me to be the catalyst for her destruction. When the plane finally touched down at Valana International Airport, I was moving before it came to a complete stop. I bypassed the tourist crowds, my face a grim mask of determination, and found the private seaplane charter that serviced the St. Regis. I paid an exorbitant fee for an immediate, exclusive flight to the resort, my hands shaking as I handed over my credit card. The seaplane ride was a surreal journey over a paradise that felt like a mockery. The water below was a dazzling, impossible shade of turquoise, dotted with the idyllic palm-fringed islands the Maldives are famous for. But all I saw was the isolation, the vast emptiness of the ocean, the perfect place for a secret to be buried forever. As we approached the resort, a cluster of overwater villas connected by long wooden walkways, I could see the John Jacob Astor estate at the very end, the most secluded of them all. From the air, it looked serene, untouched. My heart hammered against my ribs. What would I find? An empty villa, a crime scene? The plane landed smoothly on the water, and a speedboat whisked me to the reception jetty. A resort manager, a polished man with a practiced smile, greeted me. Mrs. Vance, we weren't expecting you for another week, he said, his smile faltering slightly as he took in my frantic expression. Where is my husband? Where is Liam Vance? I demanded, forgoing all pleasantries. Mr. Vance and his companion checked out this morning, madam, he said, his professional composure firmly in place. Checked out? I stared at him, my mind struggling to process the words. Checked out and went where? They left the island? Yes, madam. They took a private charter back to the main airport early this morning. Mr. Vance settled the account in full. Relief, potent and dizzying, washed over me. They were alive. They were together. And they were off the island. My frantic call must have been enough to prevent the worst. Liam must have been scared off. But where had they gone and why? Did he leave a message for me? A forwarding address? Any information at all? The manager shook his head. No, madam. He was very quiet. He insisted on leaving immediately. My mind was racing. If they were alive, why had the anonymous texter said too late? It didn't make sense. Unless the danger wasn't from Liam. I thanked the manager and walked on unsteady legs toward the now empty villa at the end of the pier. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was cool and still. The place was immaculate, cleaned by the resort staff, all traces of its former occupants erased. Except for one. On the large glass coffee table, in the center of the living room sat a single white envelope. My name, Alara, was written on the front. It wasn't Liam's handwriting. It was a woman's, neat and precise. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside was not a letter, but a small, silver USB flash drive. Nothing else, no note, no explanation. I stood there for a long moment, the tiny piece of metal feeling as heavy as a bomb in my palm. This was it, the final move in the game. I didn't have a laptop with me. I raced back to the reception building, found the business center, and locked the door behind me. I inserted the flash drive into a desktop computer, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A single file appeared on the screen, a video file named truth.mp4. I clicked play. The video flickered to life. It was a recording, seemingly from a hidden camera placed in the corner of the villa's living room. The timestamp in the corner showed it was from the previous day, just moments after my call to Chloe had been cut off. The scene was tense. Liam stood in the center of the room, his face pale with rage. Chloe was backed against a wall, her phone clutched in her hand. "Who was that?" Liam demanded, his voice low and menacing. "No one," Chloe whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "Don't lie to me," he roared, taking a step toward her. "Was it her? Was it Alara? Did you go to her? Did you tell her everything?" I don't know what you're talking about," Chloe stammered. Liam let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "Oh, you know, this whole thing, the trip, the empty bank accounts, her knowing about you, this was your plan, wasn't it? You played me. You seduced me to get to my money, and when you realized I wouldn't leave her, you went to Alara to blow it all up." The video was confirming my worst fears. He thought she had betrayed him to me. But then, the scene shifted. Chloe straightened up, the fear in her eyes was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. It was a transformation so complete it was chilling. The terrified girl vanished, and a woman I had never seen before took her place. "You're wrong, Liam," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I didn't go to Alara, and I don't want your money, or hers." Liam stared at her, confused. "Then what is this? What do you want?" Chloe took a deep breath. "I want justice for my mother, for all the people your company has destroyed with its lies." She began to speak and she laid it all out, the fraud, the inflated numbers, the lives ruined by their predatory practices. She explained how her mother's small pension fund had invested in his company, based on its fraudulent reports, and had been wiped out, leaving her without the money for the treatment that could have saved her life. The affair, she said, her voice laced with disgust, was a means to an end. It was the only way to get close enough to find the proof I needed to put you in prison. Liam's face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions, disbelief, shock, and finally, a dawning, horrifying understanding. He wasn't the victim of a romantic betrayal. He was the mark in a long con, and he had fallen for it completely. He stumbled backward, collapsing onto the sofa, his handsome face a mask of utter ruin. The video then cut to a different scene. It was hours later. Liam was sitting in the same spot, looking broken. Chloe was sitting opposite him, a laptop open between them. She was talking to him, her voice no longer angry, but calm and measured. She was explaining the evidence she had, the airtight case she had built. She wasn't threatening him. She was offering him a choice. "They will find you, Liam," she said, "the regulators, the FBI. It's over. You can either be the villain who goes down for everything, or you can help me. You can help me get the man who put you up to this." And then came the final, devastating revelation. "I know you weren't the architect of this fraud, Liam," Chloe said. "You're not smart enough. You were just the face, the charismatic puppet. He was the one pulling the strings. The one who taught you how to cook the books, who structured the deals, who buried the evidence. He used your greed and your vanity against you." My breath caught in my throat. "I'm talking about Arthur Croft," Chloe said. The world tilted on its axis. Arthur, my loyal, discreet lawyer. The man who had helped me set up the trusts. The man who had access to everything. The anonymous texter. The video ended. I sat there in the sterile business center, my mind a blank slate of shock. Arthur had played everyone. He had masterminded the corporate fraud using Liam as his puppet. He had discovered my plan for revenge likely through the very legal documents. He had prepared for me and saw an opportunity. He used me to put Liam and Chloe in a vulnerable position. His plan was simple and brilliant. Let Liam, in a jealous rage, kill Chloe. The whistleblower would be silenced, the evidence she held would be buried, and Arthur would walk away clean, leaving me and Liam to take the fall. But he had miscalculated. He hadn't counted on Chloe's strength, or my desperate, last-minute intervention. Chloe had turned the tables, not just on Liam, but on Arthur himself. The USB drive wasn't for me, it was for the authorities. She had left it for me because she knew I had the resources and the motivation to ensure it got into the right hands. My phone buzzed. It was a new number, one I didn't recognize. I answered, my hand steady. "Hello?" Alara, it was Chloe's voice, strong and clear. Did you get my gift? I got it, I said, my voice quiet. Where are you? We're in a safe place. Liam is cooperating. He's telling us everything about Arthur. It's enough. More than enough. There was a pause. I'm sorry for what this has done to you, Alara. None of this was about you. I know, I said, and for the first time, I felt a strange sense of peace, the anger, the betrayal. The grief, it all seemed to belong to another lifetime. What do you need me to do? Get that drive to the U.S. Attorney's office in the Southern District of New York, she said. They're expecting it, and Alara, be careful. The line went dead. I removed the flash drive, my movements deliberate. My anniversary gift for Liam had been a one-way ticket to a life with his mistress. But Chloe's parting gift to me was something far more profound. It was the truth, and it was a weapon. 6 months later, I sat on the terrace of a small villa I'd rented in the south of France. Overlooking the Mediterranean, the headlines had been explosive, the Vanscroft scandal. They called it. Arthur Croft was arrested, his empire of deceit crumbling around him. The evidence on the flash drive was irrefutable. Liam, in exchange for his full cooperation, received a reduced sentence. His face, once plastered on magazine covers, was now a grainy mugshot. I never heard from Chloe again. I assumed she was in witness protection, starting a new life under a new name. Sometimes, I wondered about her, the woman who had channeled her grief into a righteous crusade. I took a sip of my wine. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. My life was smaller now, quieter. The penthouse was sold, the fortune largely tied up in legal fees and restitution funds. But I had never felt richer. I had lost a husband, a fortune, and a life I thought I knew. But in the wreckage, I had found something I hadn't realized was missing: myself. The anniversary gift had been meant for Liam, a cruel and perfect punishment. But in the end, the person who had truly been set free was me.